Welcome to The Anchored Voice. This is a podcast helping men to anchor life. I'm your host, Dr. Phil 2. Welcome to the program. Hey everybody, this is your host, Dr. Phil, and I'm about to share with you a conversation between me, my father. I hope you're blessed by it. This episode, Father and Son, is sponsored by McGuire Wear, especially our new clothesline, Blacktino. Blacktino celebrating Black history and Hispanic heritage. Hope you enjoy it, and I hope it helps you anchor life. Hey everybody, welcome to The Anchored Voice, helping men to anchor life. I am your host, Dr. Philip McGuire Wesley II, and I am joined here by my father, Poppy, Pastor Philip McGuire Wesley Sr. And so this is our podcast. This is the father-son edition of The Anchored Voice. And I brought him on because there's so many experiences that fathers and sons have, regarding sports, regarding music, whatever it is. So I'm just going to ask him a few questions, and we're just going to have a good time talking together as a father and son. Welcome to the show, Dad.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, so this is a video podcast, and this is also an audio, so they'll be able to hear it and also see us. So many experiences we've had together. Now, one of the things I always share with people, actually I'm wearing a shirt right now, Honduras, the Honduras flag. And so you're originally from Honduras?
I'm originally from Honduras. It's a small republic in Central America, Latin America, matter of fact. And that's where I was born, bred, grew up in a little town. Well, actually, it's off the coast of Honduras, an island called Rotan. There are 3 islands, and they are known as the Bay Island. Rotan is the capital of those 3, and that's where I was born and bred.
And what language did you speak there?
Well, actually, the official language of the republic is Spanish. We spoke Spanish and English. We have all of the official, the post office, the government is in Spanish. You go to school from, let's say, 8 to 12. You have siesta from 12 to 2, and you go back to school from 2 to 4. And that's all in Spanish, but in between, we were sent to English school to learn the English language, and that's how we became bilingual.
And you grew up with a big family. How many siblings?
Well, there are 10 of us in that family. Actually, every time it rained, a child was born, but we have 10 children, 6 girls and 4 boys.
Yeah, and one of them liked to get on the mic and sing a lot.
Well, we grew up in the church, the Seventh-day Adventist church, and my dad was an educator. He believed in sending his children to do education. Mom, well, she liked music, and so she would send them to either learn to play the piano. My brother, Carlos, actually, he played a classic guitar, and during the course of that, his growing up, he went away from home and actually became an entertainer in Honduras, in Central America, playing his guitar and doing the entertainment work outside of the church, matter of fact.
So his name was actually Carlos McField. because McField was your mother's maiden name.
Well, his name was Carlos Wesley, but when he got into the entertainment world, I don't know, he changed it to Carlos McField, which is my mother's maiden name, and that stuck with him throughout his entertainment business. In fact, he did a song that for years and years at the sports arena, every time they had a soccer team or a game, they played his song to begin the process. Matter of fact.
Nice. So he started the blow up real big. Now, being from Honduras, but you're also black in Honduras. I like to call it Blacktino. How was that growing up, being black, but also in the Spanish island?
Well, we didn't have any real trouble with the blacks and the other Hispanic folk. Actually, the fair-skinned native. We all spoke the same language, went to the same school, got along well. Spoke for where I grew up. We spoke English and Spanish. On the mainland, in several of the big cities, you had the black, what you might call black American now, black African American, and you had the native Spanish-speaking folk. The black Americans spoke both languages, which was a good thing for them.
Wow. So you have a culture there. Sports. How did you get into sports? Was that introduced to you in Honduras or when you came to the States?
Well, no, sports actually, the main sports in Latin America is what we call in Latin America soccer. Actually, I was surprised when I came to the United States many years ago, and they are calling something football. Actually, the soccer is the football. You handle it mostly with your foot.
It's true.
And I don't know how they got it mixed up, but you throw in the American football with your hand and the soccer with your foot. But in any case, that was the big event. Now, we did have, actually, they had baseball, not as big as soccer. And in the school, as a, education outside of the classroom, they would take us at times to do football, and we would form a baseball team as well.
Well, so you started playing there. So you came to the States a little later on. Who was your favorite team when you came to the States?
Well, actually, we grew up looking or listening, actually, on our ham radio to the Dodgers. The Brooklyn Dodgers, matter of fact.
That's right. That's why
time.
I have this
Jackie
Robinson shirt.
Very well. That's a good sign.
That's right.
We began to listen and enjoy and support the Brooklyn Dodgers. There's a story behind that, but we don't have time to talk about that now.
What's the story?
Well, because of the same Jackie Robinson, actually, we thought that maybe supporting the team because they took him on was the right thing to do.
Okay.
The Yankees, matter of fact, we did hear about the Yankees, but actually, the truth is they beat up on the Dodgers so often that
that's right. Got tired of them.
Got tired of that, and that didn't help us liking the Yankees at all. Now we had the Giants as well, but for the most part, the Brooklyn Dodgers was our favorite team.
Do you remember how the Dodgers got their name?
I have not studied the way the Dodgers
So
got
the
their name.
history,
Maybe you can help us with that.
yeah, the history is told that in Brooklyn they had the trolleys, and people would run out of the way of the trolleys, or else you get maimed or killed, because there were trolleys going in Brooklyn. So they called them the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers. Right? So because people were constantly getting out of the way of the trolley Dodgers, actually the original name of the Brooklyn Dodgers were, I believe, the groomsmen, or the something to do with it wasn't bridesmaids, but it was the groomsmen, I believe. And then they took on the trolley Dodgers. Then later on they shortened it to be the Dodgers. So that's your history of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Yes,
so
that's
they've been around for a while.
Yeah, they have been. We did not know the history. All we knew, actually, we couldn't hear all the games. Generally, during the playoffs, maybe the World Series, where they would broadcast it on the shortwave radio, and we'll pick it up from there. And we were supporting the Dodgers. To our chagrin, generally they'll lose to the Yankees, but anyway,
they had a couple of victories.
They had a few victories that made it, good for us at the moment. Anyway.
So, who was your favorite player growing up?
With the Dodgers, actually, growing up, Sandy Koufax became my favorite. They had the catcher. What was his name? I forgot his name.
Campbell?
No.
Campanella?
Campanella.
Campanella.
There you go. Campanella. That was my favorite. That boy, we loved that boy. I mean, could play. He was basically the favorite in the family.
So how did you feel when Brooklyn moved to L.A.?
Well, it was brokenhearted because we figure they could have, in spite of the Yankees, having a better record.
Oh yeah.
We felt that the Dodgers could at least stay right there in Brooklyn, Ebbetsfield, and build a team there, and actually that would have been good for the city and for the Dodgers themselves. But for whatever reason, they decided that they'll move out of, Ebbetsfield.
Yeah, so the legend is that they wanted to move where the Brooklyn Nets play. They wanted to build a new stadium. New York wasn't going to give them a new stadium on that lot.
Okay.
By the Atlantic Yards, I believe. And I believe they really wanted them to go to Flushing. And so when Brooklyn owner Walter O'Malley refused to move to Queens, I remember there was a real flux of people moving to Long Island around that time. So less people were coming back to Brooklyn for the game. So they wanted to move them to Queens. And so what happened was he struck a deal with California, and you had a 2-for-1 deal, because the New York Giants, the New York baseball Giants, were moved from Polo Grounds, and they moved out to San Francisco, and Brooklyn moved to L.A. So that's the history.
That's the story of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
At least that's what I've read. That's what they told. So then after that, eventually they have to form another National League team in New York. And that's when they formed the New York Mets.
That's when the Mets came into being. And so we had, actually, we had the Dodgers, obviously, and we had to support the Mets because, I think that they took some of the colors from the Dodgers uniform.
That's right.
And they were replacing the Dodgers, so we had to go along with the Mets, never the Yankees.
The Dodgers and the Giants. So the
Dodgers
blue
and the Giants, yes.
The blue from the Dodgers and the orange from the Giants.
Yes.
And even the logo, the NY logo, they took from the Giants, from the New York Giants.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
So if you compare the logos, the New York logos, the Mets have the New York Giants logo.
Well,
so that's the history.
They were replacing, sort of adding something from both those National League teams in New York that moved to West Coast.
So when the Mets started playing in the 60s and the 70s, who became your favorite player?
Well, I remember Tom Seaver, the one I could remember. The Mets, I've always told people, if I ever have a heart attack, I'm having to blame it on the Mets who couldn't win.
Yeah.
Who couldn't win the game for ages and ages. Yeah. Tom Seaver was my favorite. And what my boy that was out there in Agard, not out there in
Tommy Agee.
Tommy Agee.
Yeah.
Tommy Agee. Yeah, he was really my favorite. Out there, I love that boy. I mean, they had some good boys and some good players, but it seemed for years that they couldn't win if you even try to give it to them.
All right, I don't remember much early on, but I guess when I started turning 10, I remember more of the New York Mets in the 80s, especially the 86 Mets. So by the time you introduced me, I guess you were introducing me before. Do you remember introducing me to baseball?
Well, actually, we would pick them up on every once in a while, we had a black and white TV, and we'll watch some of the game on that. And as time went on, I figure you and I would play some catch and whatever out in our backyard.
I remember.
We decided that instead of going with the Yankees, we'll stick with the Mets. The tradition of the family that went back 100 years ago.
Now we're trying to carry that down to Philip III.
Well, we are going to introduce him to the New York Mets, and hopefully by the time he gets to the place where he can understand the game, that they'll be winning, have a better winning percentage.
That's right. And I remember we used to sit in the nosebleeds in Shea Stadium. But one of the things I remember, because I was scared to topple over and fall down. It was one of those growing experiences. But I do remember watching Doc Gooden.
Yes.
I remember Darryl Strawberry.
Yes.
I remember we were at a game and Darryl Strawberry hit a in-the-park home run. So, we saw him fly across all the bags. And just an awesome experience. Doc Gooden, watching him. Unfortunately, their career didn't turn out the way we thought it should, but that still was, for me, a great impact. Well, let me take you from sports to fatherhood. What was your feeling? You come from childhood, you go through Oakwood College, you meet Mom, but what was your first experience as a father like? What did you feel?
Well, it was a new experience, actually. Like I said, we had 10 children in our family. I didn't have to raise any of them or to, take them, because the two under me were girls. Mm-hmm. But being a father was a new experience, and a beautiful one, matter of fact. So those days, raising a child was challenging, but it was a beautiful experience. In fact, I remember. Well, we had a girl first, and being from the Caribbean, this was at a church named Bethel in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And our young couple, all of them, they had boys, and so they got on me and they said, "Wesley, man, well, what happened? It takes a man to bring a boy into the world." I said, "All right, well, we'll see about that." Later on, actually, maybe 4 years later, we had a girl. And I don't know how true it is, but folk have told me, said it takes more of a man to produce a girl than it takes to be a boy.
Yeah.
And up to this date, I don't want to call their names, but if they see this podcast, they'll know who I'm talking about. all of them boys who were messing with me for having a girl first, they could not produce a girl. Not one of them. So I had to get back on the case. Yeah, I brought them boys in. I said, now, what kind of man does it take now to have a girl? So that's the way we left that with them boys.
Yeah, we're having a lot of challenges today in fatherhood, and fathers sticking around and, really staying the course. What would you want to say to fathers today about their responsibility and, the growth that they need to have?
Well, if you're a father, part of your responsibility. I mean, it used to be in years gone by when they said the father was the person you produce the child and leave the upbringing to the mom or to the mother. The father generally, well, in the years gone by, would be what they call the breadwinner. But when you have a child, your responsibility as a father is pretty much equal to that of the mother. The child needs that father love and that father care and that father character in her life. And it's not something that when you have a child, you go out, do the work, come home, pick up the newspaper, sit down in your rocking chair and expect your wife to, cook the food and train the child and discipline its child and take it from there. The father has a major responsibility in raising their children and paying some close attention to them. And you'll see that once they grow up, they'll be a better person in society than if you just left them alone for mom to do all the disciplining and all the loving and all the caring and all the entertainment. You'll do well to pay attention to your children, boy or girl.
Funniest experience I've had with you being raised. You didn't change me all the time. Some days you just, had to go where you had to go and put me in the car. So I remember waking up in the car in my footies, and I looked out and I said, "Where am I?" And I looked over the window, and there I am on the lift in the garage looking at you and the mechanic from the air. The funniest experience I can remember having, just wondering to myself, what in the world am I doing up here?
Well, as a child, Mom, I think she had to go to work early. And we would have to get up and take her to her job. But we didn't have time to get you up and get you changed and what have you, because it was still early in the morning. And so my best thing that day was to take you as in your pajamas.
Yeah.
Wrapped you up in a blanket. And when we left the house, matter of fact, folk, he was asleep. We put him in the back seat. He was dead to sleep. We went to the mechanic that we had to be there at a certain time. And we talked to him, and he said, "Listen, it'll be safe. The windows were pretty much up. It's not too far up in the air. He'll be fine, and just let it be."
I think they have laws against that now.
Well,
nowadays, I think they have. But another experience I had, I remember you were doing some construction at the church. You were a pastor for 42 years in Northeastern Conference in New York. And we were at Lebanon at the time. And so you had changed over the pulpit from one side to another. But I can remember going in the hardware store many times with you, with, I guess, the guys from the construction. And now they have Home Depot and Lowe's, but that smell when you walk into a hardware store or even a tire shop, there's just that smell that you have. That brings back a lot of nostalgia when I walk into any kind of hardware store. And so I'm just sharing that with you. Just I always remember that time hanging with you and going to the church and watching how you directed that.
Well, we had we bought they bought this church, Lebanon. It was a Jewish synagogue, and they had the pulpit, I think, facing the east.
Right.
But what was wrong with that was that the main door to the church was right there in front of the pulpit, and it was rather disturbing because you had latecomers.
Yeah.
And there's no other entrance except right up there at the pulpit.
Yeah.
So we decided that we'll just take the pulpit from the one side and build it up on the other side, so that it would be less disturbance for the latecomers and other people who would be attending the service.
Yeah, that was a great experience. I just remember anytime I'm in the wood aisle of Lowe's or Home Depot, it just brings back those memories of getting into the stores and back and forth. All right, we're gonna wind down a little bit. Just share with me your favorite experience in life. What are some of your favorite experiences in life?
Well, growing up in what we call now a third world country, at the time, you thought it was we would think, well, this is a tough life. But after we left, came to United States and looked for a different type of life, we are realizing now that growing up in this quote-unquote third world country was the best thing that ever happened to us. I mean, in my family, we were not hardly rich. Well, I would say we were poor, but actually we grew up in a church, and there was never a day that we didn't have some food on the table. Never mind that some days it was the same thing over and over, but we had food on the table, and it was a tropical place. We had a lot of fruit, and my dad grew some vegetable.
Okay.
Okra, for one, that I hate up to this date, but I never forget it. Tomatoes and peppers and stuff like that. And so we always had food on the table. Our clothes, we had decent clothing. We had special clothes, of course, for the Sabbath services. There was a time when, of course, we had to go to school barefooted, but along the road that changed. And I'm seeing now that the lifestyle, growing up in a peaceful environment was one of the most beautiful experiences that we've had, that I've had. And as you look back at it now, you got to say, well, God was, watching out for His children and taking care of us.
All right, one last question. Best experiences being married?
Well, the best experience is getting married. You, in growing up, I mean, there was always a question of when. And I'll say this, in Honduras, you really didn't become a man until you were 21. And what I mean by that is you couldn't vote. Actually, I mean, here's the state, it's 18, some places, I don't know, maybe 16, but you had to be 21 before you can vote. And you look forward to getting married. Actually, most of the folk would have to maybe leave town, leave the country, go to the United States, or go and work on the ship and build a house. That was pretty much a requirement, and then look for a wife so you can have a place to you and your wife and children eventually would be coming around, and that was the experience of looking for a wife and getting married and preparing to take care of one.
So when you saw Mom, what was your expression?
Well, actually, we went to Huntsville, Alabama. I saw this fine-looking young lady. She came a year after I was there, and I had a friend, Pierre Hunt, I'll call his name. He was one of my roommates. Phil Carey was my first roommate the first year that we went there.
I went to school with his son, too.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Yeah, well, Phil Carey and his brother, we were roommates, and we were just on the campground. One evening, we went to the girls' dorm, and, well, in those days, actually, even in chapel, the boys had to sit on one side, and the girls had to sit on the other side, even in church. Well, she arrived at the dorm, and I mean, I'm up to this day, I'm still not sure how it came with my mouth, but she had this big, looked like a truck.
One of those trunks.
In those days, they traveled with a trunk, and she's struggling with this trunk, trying to pull it up a few stairs that in the dorm, and I just said, may I help you? I mean, I wasn't necessarily meaning it, because you could not go into the girl dorms. You just, in a way.
You found an excuse.
One excuse, and she just looked around and said, I don't think so. But then, I don't know, during the course of the year, we'll eventually either meet in the cafeteria or pass by on the school ground from one classroom to the next.
Yeah.
And so I began to notice, and actually, I wasn't paying much attention at the time, but once you pursue, they pretty much got to say something to you.
Right.
It got to the point, matter of fact, where a lot of people thought we were brothers and sisters.
Like Abraham and Sarah.
Like Abraham and Sarah.
Yeah.
But eventually, we got to talking and got acquainted, and the rest of it is 52 years of marriage, 2 wonderful children. I came from a family of 10. I really wanted a bigger family, but we
different times.
Different time. That the woman said, "Listen, I have a girl, and 4 years later we have a boy." And it says they only made 2 sexes. I had one of each, and so we closed the door on that.
That was it. That was it. Well, it was great growing up under your leadership as a father. I learned a lot from you as a pastor. One of the things I learned about being a pastor is patience.
Yes, sir.
How to deal with, how we say, challenging members, challenging folk, and keeping a level head all the way through. I've learned to be a provider and to just be there for my family and love my family. So I've learned a lot from you, and just want to say I appreciate you, love you, and I'm glad to share these moments with you on camera and on audio, all right? So I'm your host, Dr. Philip McGuire Wesley II. My original name is Junior, so let me just put that in there. It's Philip McGuire Wesley Jr. Just like Carlos changed his name to McField, which is an Irish name. Yes. McGuire is an Irish name, so somewhere we're connected to Ireland somehow.
Yeah,
somehow. And but I always reach back and support the Hispanic heritage that you grew up under, and I'm always connected to the Hispanic heritage. So it's been great being, a black person, but also Hispanic at the same time. Now, I don't speak as fluently as you do, but you have that heritage, and I want to continue to carry that along. Also a pastoral heritage, but not just being a pastor, but just being in ministry. as we continue to share God's message of the second coming and also the sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross. So we're just going to close it out here, and I just want to thank you for sharing this time with me. Everybody, this is the Anchored Voice. This is the Father-Son edition. I'm with Pastor Philip McGuire Wesley Sr., and right now, currently, we're in Florida, and just happy to be able to do this podcast with him. And may God bless you all, fathers, sons. Spend time with your dad, spend time with your family, and make that time count. Make that time count as much as you can. All right? Thanks for joining, everybody. God bless you.
Bless you, everybody.
Algún día mi vida, tú mi amor serás. Y algún día mi vida, tú mi amor serás. Yo sé que tú no me quieres, pero loco estoy por ti. Pero sé que algún día tu amor será solamente para